Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're cracking open a truly thrilling historical case file. We're going to dive into the incredible story of Diego and Gabriela Silang, two revolutionary figures from the 18th century who dared to challenge an empire. We're going to treat this explainer like an audit, weighing the historical evidence to see if these two extraordinary individuals fit the ultimate standard of heroism.
Here is our roadmap for today's audit. First, the national hero paradox. Second, the strategist, Diego Silang. Third, La Generala, Gabriela Silang. And finally, the case for heroes.
Section 1. The National Hero Paradox, investigating the official criteria. So, let me ask you a direct question. If you know a bit about Philippine history, who would you say is the officially legislated national hero of the country? Go ahead, take a guess. I bet most of you immediately thought of Dr. Jose Rizal, right? Or maybe the fierce revolutionary Andres Bonifacio. Seems like a pretty easy answer.
Well, here's the punchline. Nobody. It's true. The Philippine government has actually never officially proclaimed any individual as the national hero by law, not even Rizal. It's left entirely to historical consensus and practice. And honestly, this blank official slate is exactly why auditing historical figures like the Silangs is such a fascinating exercise for us today.
So how do we judge a hero? We're going to look at the 1995 National Heroes Committee's rubric. Even though no law was ever passed, this committee met to outline exactly what makes a national hero. They decided a hero must struggle for the nation's freedom, contribute to liberty and good governance, inspire future generations, and become embedded in collective memory. We're going to use this exact rubric as our benchmark today to see exactly how the Silangs measure up.
Section 2. The Strategist, Diego Silang, a geopolitical window.
To really understand Diego's genius, we have to look at the timeline. When we think of Philippine revolutions, our minds usually jump straight to Rizal and Bonifacio in the 1890s. But the Silang Rebellion happened in 1762. We're talking more than a whole century earlier. Diego and his wife Gabriela were absolute visionary pioneers. They were out there organizing armed resistance and fighting for self-governance decades before those more famous revolutions even took shape.
And you have to remember, the 1760s were an era of absolute chaos. The 7 Years' War in Europe literally spilled all the way over into the Philippines. Britain declared war on Spain, and in October 1762, the British Royal Navy actually breached Spanish defenses and captured Manila. This unprecedented naval defeat completely shattered the myth of Spanish invincibility. It created this rapid, explosive timeline where colonial authority temporarily collapsed, and that provided the exact spark Diego needed.
Now, Diego was an incredibly sharp guy. He came from humble beginnings, working as a messenger and courier between Manila and Ilocos. Because he was always traveling, he saw the colonial abuse, the unfair taxation, and the forced labor firsthand. But notice how practical his initial steps were. He didn't just blindly start a war. He actually went to the Spanish authorities with clear demands: remove abusive officials, appoint qualified local Ilocanos, let Filipino priests lead, lower taxes, and allow local self-government. He even offered to help defend Ilocos against the British. But in a fatal mistake, the Spanish absolutely refused to trust native Filipinos with leadership.
So here's the crucial point. When his demands were rejected, Diego didn't just lead a riot. He strategically allied with the occupying British forces, who recognized him as governor, and he systematically established one of the earliest functioning Filipino self-governments. He declared a free Ilocos. He collected local taxes, maintained peace, organized a military, and completely replaced the Spanish administrators. He wasn't just rebelling, he was actually governing.
But as you can imagine, this rapid consolidation of power made him a massive threat. Spanish church and government authorities realized they couldn't beat him in open battle, so they put a bounty on his head. Tragically, in May 1763, Diego was assassinated in his own home. And honestly, the most heartbreaking part? He was betrayed and murdered by his own friends and former allies, Miguel Vicos and Pedro Becbec. Diego Silang died at the age of just 32.
Section 3. La Generala, Gabriela Silang, the matriarch of liberty.
With Diego murdered, colonial authorities assumed the rebellion would instantly die. They were so wrong. Allow me to introduce Maria Josefa Gabriela Carino Silang. She wasn't merely the wife of Diego. Historical accounts tell us she was already one of his closest advisors. When he died, she stepped right into the power vacuum and took command, earning the title La Generala.
By doing this, she absolutely shattered 18th century gender expectations, becoming the very first Filipina to lead a large-scale armed revolt against Spanish colonial rule. Let's break down her incredible tactical mind, because her counteroffensive was brilliant. After the assassination, she didn't surrender. Step 1. She strategically fled to the rugged mountains of Abra to reorganize. Step 2. Leveraging her mother's heritage, she united lowland Ilocanos with fierce Itnig mountain warriors, building an army of over 2,000 loyal fighters. Step 3. She rode out on horseback, wielding a bolo, and launched a bold, multi-pronged guerrilla assault to retake the capital city of Vigan. Her leadership was just exceptional, not just in the Philippines, but by global standards of that era.
Sadly, bravery alone couldn't beat 18th century imperial firepower. Gabriela's forces were ultimately overwhelmed by regrouped Spanish forces utilizing superior archers and artillery. She retreated, but was eventually captured. On September 20, 1763, Gabriela Silang was publicly executed by hanging in Vigan's Central Plaza. In a haunting historical parallel, she was executed at the exact same age as her husband, just 32 years old.
Section 4. The Case for Heroes, Auditing the Legacy.
All right, let's bring back that 1995 National Heroes Committee rubric and audit their legacy. First, did they have a concept of a nation? Yes. They didn't just protest, they established the sovereign state of Free Ilocos. Second, did they create a system of freedom and order? Absolutely. Diego abolished exploitative taxes and actually governed by appointing qualified locals. Third, are they part of the people's expression? Well, Gabriela shattered colonial expectations, becoming the Joan of Arc of Ilocandia, and her legacy literally birthed modern grassroots organizations. This exact alignment is exactly why the committee officially recommended Gabriela for recognition back in 1995.
However, as with all history, we've got to be objective and look at the nuance. Some historians point out a more complex reality. For one, Diego strategically allied with the British Empire, meaning he collaborated with one foreign occupier to defeat another. Plus, in the 1760s, the concept of a unified Philippines didn't really exist yet. The Silangs were fighting strictly for a regional Free Ilocos, not the entire archipelago. Because of this, some scholars view them as a crucial precursor to national identity rather than the final product. Yet, despite that regional focus, it's amazing how deeply embedding their spirits are in modern Philippine institutions today. Why does this history matter right now? Because their names literally surround us. The Philippine Coast Guard patrols the waters today in the vessel BRP Gabriela Silang. The Navy sails ships named after Diego. Nationwide, streets, schools, and monuments proudly bear their names. They remain two of the most enduring symbols of courage and resistance in the country's collective memory.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer, and back to you, the focused learner. We've audited the historical facts, we've looked at their incredible self-governance, their military courage, and the historical complexities of their regional revolt. So, I have to ask, do Diego and Gabriela Silang fit your definition of national heroes? It's a fascinating question, and one I'll leave you to ponder. Thanks for cracking this case file with me today.